Hello and welcome to Martini's Eco and Country Bites. I'm Martine Shepherd, and today I am interviewing and having a straightforward and straight talk discussion with the one and only Senator Malcolm Roberts. Now, he shouldn't need any introduction to many people here in Australia. He's certainly someone that I hear time and time again that's a true representative of the people, always in their Canberra, representing the issues that are affecting most Australians and certainly issues that may not be on the spotlight or under the spotlight straight away, but he is always there batting for everyday Australians. I'd like to welcome Senator Malcolm Roberts to Edge Radio Australia. How are you today, Senator Roberts?
Thank you. Thank you very much for the welcome, Martine. I'm very well, thanks. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm sick of the raining weather here in Western Australia, down in the south. I think we are sodden to the core.
Getting
I'm
bogged,
jealous.
are you?
A little bit, yes. It's we've had a lot of roads wash away, and there has been a lack of maintenance in some areas where I am, and so they're doing a lot of sort of back work, I guess. And it's hard to sort of criticize because the workers out there do their best, but certainly we know that where funding goes to councils and where they're told to spend the money is that one of the issues that I think we'll probably maybe touch on today if we have got time.
Well, if you were dishonest, Martine, I know you're not, you'd be blaming the weather, the climate. You'd be blaming our use of carbon dioxide making fuels, coal, oil, and natural gas. But I know you're
Yeah,
honest, so it wouldn't cross your mind.
exactly. I'm not like Henny Penny screaming from the mountaintops, the sky's falling in, and some hysteria about climate change. That's not really my gig. What I will do is call out the nonsense like you have been for some time. That Senator Matt Canavan, I saw him today on a reel, and I think it was an inquest into the climate change hysteria again, and how they've said that so many predictions of death to heat because climate change.
Well,
I try not to laugh.
Matt's an interesting character because he was Chief of Staff when Barnaby Joyce was a Senator for Queensland.
Mm-hmm.
And when Queensland, when Barnaby was a senator for Queensland, he was by far the most colourful speaker against this climate rubbish. He was
The
very,
swindle.
very effective, and he called it out, and he did it very, very effectively. And of course, Matt was a skeptic as well. They didn't believe this nonsense. But then something strange happened, and Barnaby went to the lower house sat for the seat of New England in New South Wales, and Matt became his replacement as a senator for Queensland. Both very competent people, both very intelligent, but something strange happened. They both became climate alarmists, and they switched camps. And Barnaby was given $400 million, $400 million for installing wind turbines as a promise to farmers in New England. And Matt suddenly made a speech in 2015, December 2015, saying that carbon dioxide from human activity needs to be cut. And I thought, what's going on? And later on they saw the error of their ways, presumably, because they're both moving back to opposing net zero, which is wonderful. So, I mean, they're both intelligent. So I don't know what happened to them, but it's great that they're coming back on side with the climate reality now.
You know what? This is why these discussions are so important. And the pun is that you and I do see eye to eye, literally, but on many, many subjects.
Vertically challenged. Everyone else is abnormal. We're normal height.
We're in the normal spectrum of height, aren't we? I think certainly, well, standing next to Tyron Witten, that's not quite that's a formidable situation, trying to have a conversation without doing a neck injury and
Yep.
interviewing. There's always a step ladder every time I need to do an interview with Senator Tyron Witten. So
I'm the
that's,
same with talking with him in the Senate.
oh, we can have a laugh about it, keep it real. Look, let's go back.
I'm
Sorry.
so glad he's in the Senate, Martine, because he brings a courage and an integrity that is missing from the Senate. It's so wonderful to have like-minded people like Tyron. He agrees on everything I've talked about so far with him and Pauline. He agrees on, but he's not afraid to say it, which is wonderful, and he's got the integrity to call it out. And he's bloody good to have behind me in the Senate. I can tell you that. It's wonderful having Tyron.
The word is gumption. And I think that that's the word I've used a number of times. This is a man with backbone and gumption. Like, he's got real life experience. He's looked into a lot of things and researched himself. And that's why, when it comes down to common sense and ecological science, we challenge the whole modelling of this climate change hysteria and put it to bed for the fact that the modelling was flawed from the beginning, which you have called out time and time again.
Well, the other thing about Tyron I like is his practicality. He's got a lot of very down-to-earth practical experience. He calls a spade a spade. He calls out the bullshit, and he's not afraid to challenge anyone. I
No.
put a couple of things to him, and he said, I thought they'd be pretty challenging for him. And he said, no, I agree with that totally. But I got the sense that if he disagreed, he'd tell me too. And I know that when the Greens and others do it, he stands up and challenges them. So wonderful. Welcome to Tyron. Welcome to Tyron to the Senate. It's great to have him.
I know that his support for Save Our Beloved Geograph Bay over here in Western Australia, and a number of massive issues with stopping offshore and onshore wind turbines, certainly in agriculture and other areas, he's really digging his teeth into, which is greatly appreciated, because we need this on the table each time that Canberra comes to meet, where we need to hold them accountable, Mr. Bowen and his green pipe dream. Look,
Nightmare.
I don't know what.
It's a nightmare.
It's a night. It is like, I keep saying that this is another cane toad situation where it is a knee-jerk reaction, and that they're going, oh, this is great, this is the solution, let's just implement it and fast track it without doing any of the base data, do the research, the consultation process. None of that was done. That would have been done normally when it comes to new industries coming into this nation, and that has not been followed through at any point. It's all about ideology and certainly adapting this net zero insanity that is going to send this nation bankrupt and destroy every single industry. People just can't comprehend just how bad it is going down the line.
And it's going to get far, far worse, Martine. And the words you used are spot on. I don't know if you can read this, but it's my submission to it's always a tangle here. Submission to the Select Committee on Information Integrity on Climate Change and Energy. It's basically a Greens motion that the Labor Party supported to bring back the misinformation and disinformation bill. But they're targeting climate change and energy. There's not a single stitch of empirical data, scientific proof that says we need to do anything about human production of carbon dioxide. According to these monkeys, you're polluting right now because you're exhaling carbon dioxide, and 125 times the proportion that it went in to your body. So, this is absolutely ridiculous. You're not polluting the planet by breathing. Neither are koalas, neither are kangaroos. They're not polluting. It's complete rubbish. But I understand you want to talk about that.
No, it's utter nonsense is what it is, and it shows the degree of brainwashing and indoctrination that's going on. There are so many avenues I want to go into with this, but this is talking about the state of politics, which is what we were going to talk about today. And I certainly would say that there are it seems like there's some Green senators that wouldn't mind having a few of us not exhaling on the planet anymore, and certainly their vile venting that's going on in Canberra is actually truly alarming. Like Senator Hanson-Young, and the vile venting that has had nothing to do with science, data, fact, but some emotive response that comes from some ideology that they think that they have the right, as paid representatives of this nation, to use up that time in Canberra and make a complete mockery of what politics is about. And I think Australians are fed up, absolutely had a gutful.
I agree with you entirely. But you know what? She's a blessing to us because she's so ridiculous, so unhinged, so over the top that people can see right through her. And she's wacko. She gave a speech in Parliament. I can't remember what the topic was, but it was about climate immigration. I'm sorry. And she was so over the top that I asked my staff to post her speech on my website and to then publicise it on social media. We did the same with Nick McKim, talking from the Greens, also from Tassie, talking about gender change. You can't change gender. You just can't. You're born with X chromosomes. That's it. You can't change them. You can cut bits and pieces off your body. I can do the same, but that doesn't change my sex and your sex. So
No.
Nick McKim went on a rant after I called him out on this rubbish. And I asked my staff, this is 12 months ago, I asked my staff to post his speech. I mean, they're way over the top, and they do themselves damage. Fundamentally, what I say to them while I'm laughing at them is that what I say in response is that if you had any evidence, you would have given it to us, but you haven't.
Yeah.
And so what you've
Yeah.
come back with is logical fallacies, smears, lies, innuendo, these kinds of things, which say one thing, Martine: you do not have the evidence, Sarah Hanson-Young. You do not have the evidence, Nick McKim. You do not have the evidence, Larissa Waters, Adam Bant. None of you have got the evidence, so you've got to resort to logical fallacies and smears and lies. If you had the data, you would have presented it, and I'd walk away with my tail between my legs. But all you're doing is raising my confidence.
Absolutely. All they're doing is giving the foundation that everything that is logic, science-based, common sense is nothing that they come from. They come from a perspective that's so extreme, and that this is why everything's so inverted still. We can talk about inversion for a long time here, but when we talk about the state of politics in Australia, it is top down, and this is where I think the major error that's happening here is these individuals that seem to be running this country that I feel are not really elected, because when it's only 34% at best, that's on a good day. I would like to see how people are really responding now at the 34%. I know that certainly One Nation is giving them a run for their money and kicking some goals as you're running with it. But more than anything, I look and I see that local council has been infiltrated by the same ideology. It's all been planned, state government. So there's so little pushback unless we get this straight from local, regional area, state, and back to federal, and holding them more accountable, because at the moment we've got the federal government dictating how spending is going to go because of this ideology that's put in place. And, most people are just about rates, roads, rubbish, and making sure their communities are really functional for what's best for them. And this is where all of this power is taken away from local council by this top-down ideology, and it's all driven by foreign policies and foreign entities that have been lobbying this government. And as you said before, money corrupts, and those people that were swayed by money and now have seen the light have come back to say, no, that's incorrect. I'm going to go back on now stepping up and pushing back against the climate hysteria. What do you see? We had this discussion when we did meet at the Great Debate about how at local level that there isn't the true representation that we really need also at the state, and certainly not federally. I mean, we cannot say that this federal government is acting anything but pure tyranny. They're taking away power for freedom of speech, the right to have our own national flag in a place that represents who we are. I mean, that in itself shows us how degraded this nation has become.
You're absolutely correct. There's so many things in there that I want to reinforce, because I agree with you entirely. There's not a single thing I disagree with you on that. Perhaps we should, the key word is lack of accountability. And the key word is, the number one problem in our country, Martine, is shoddy governance. It's completely shot. And the number two problem, and the number one problem as part of the problem of governance, is the contradiction of basic data. It doesn't matter what the topic is. They contradict the data. They don't use the data. They contradict it, because it's all about running not on honest data, but running on innuendos, on opinions, on ideology, on looking after their mates, on vested interests, rewarding the people who donate to them, which is many, many people donating tens of millions of dollars to both parties. But the second thing is the smashing of our sovereignty, because a lot of the ideology is coming from overseas, which we can talk on many times tonight. But I've got a favourite saying that says, all problems in Australia start or are worsened in Canberra. All problems that we face are worsened in or start in Canberra. Number one problem I've mentioned, I made some notes on the questions you sent. Number one problem is governance and the contradiction of data. That is completely arse up. You run a business
Totally.
by the data and plan. Federal government runs a business without the data, contradicting the data. Sovereignty. This impacts cost of living because the energy prices are driven to the roof. Energy prices are driven by the conversion to solar and wind and the many subsidies. That's what's driving energy prices up. The number one cost category in manufacturing these days is no longer labour. It's now electricity. Labour has been mechanised, automated, and so it's energy costs. And both electricity and gas are going through the roof. We are the world's third largest exporters of natural gas, vying to be number one. We are the largest exporters of hydrocarbon fuels, coal, oil, and natural gas. The largest. We can't use the stuff in our country. We export gas cheaply, and yet we import gas at the world's highest prices. Our electricity, we mine coal in Queensland and New South Wales. We put it on a train. We take it to the port, stockpile it, transfer it, which all adds money to the cost of transporting coal. Then it gets put on a boat to go thousands of kilometres overseas. Then it gets transshipped again at another port in China, for example. And then it's put on a rail to the port. Look at all the transport costs in that. On the other hand, in Australia, most of our power stations are at the mouth of a coal mine. So it comes out of the coal mine into the power station, basically, and that's it. So
Direct
why
delivery.
the hell? Why the hell? We were the largest seaborne exporters of coal in the world. I think we're now the second after Indonesia. There's so many things to unpack in this. So why the hell have we got? We're shipping coal to China. They produce coal-fired power station, electricity with the coal-fired power station in China, and they sell it for the equivalent, when you look at the currency exchanges, of 12 cents a kilowatt hour. 12 cents. We, with the coal-fired power station at the mouth of our coal mines, sell it for 26 to 33 cents. Double to almost triple the cost. Same coal. And then we say, they're now dopey politicians here, dishonest politicians here, saying we've got to shut down the mining of coal. We produce about 500 million tonnes of coal. I think last year, a couple of years ago, it was about 460. So, but let's just say 500. The Chinese produce 4.7 billion tonnes of coal. Short tonnes, which brings it down to about 8 times what we produce. 8 times. And what's their target? 5 billion tonnes and going higher.
Wow.
They burn more than half of the coal burned in the world. And then you've got Indonesia, is now the world's largest exporter of coal. We've got India rapidly increasing. It's gone from 600 million tonnes to about 1.4 billion tonnes, and we want to go higher. We've got Brazil, Russia, spewing out carbon dioxide, which is essential for all life on this planet. It's a nature's trace atmospheric gas, essential for life, not harmful at all, not a pollutant. Donald Trump's just reversed Obama's pollution categorization, and it's no longer a pollutant. But these countries are producing carbon dioxide hand over fist. And what's happening to the temperature? The temperatures for the last 30 years since 1995 has been basically flat. Sure, it's had El Nino peaks and La Nina troughs, but that's natural. The variation is natural. So we've had no impact on the climate. We've got no impact on the climate. We are killing ourselves. What we're doing is subsidising. We're sending our coal to China to make turbines and solar panels. They're shipping them back here and with our subsidies. They're installing them with our subsidies. They're running them with our subsidies because most of the solar and wind companies are foreign-owned. Many of them Chinese, Communist Party.
Yeah.
So we're putting our security in their hands. And then what's happening is the subsidies are driving up the cost of electricity in this country. China is making out like a bandit on solar and wind. And good luck to them. I'd be doing the same if I were them. Yeah. And then we ship when our electricity prices rise, we ship our manufacturing overseas to China. So we're destroying our manufacturing, destroying our productive capacity, destroying our ability to defend ourselves, and we're handing it to China. And the Chinese are growing and growing and growing, and we're shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. I mean, this is insane.
It's more than insane. It's actually all in alignment. Well, it's also in alignment with how compromised these so-called politicians are, because what you see is that this is all part of the World Economic Forum agenda. Yep. This is all under that umbrella, is to destabilize our nation by getting rid of primary production and being able to be a strong, unified nation. So here we have destabilization of having manufacturing. We're going to have intermittent energy supply, so you can't have large industry. So even to the point where the power purchase agreement that's even pushed onto local councils is driving up the cost of everything because they are told that they have to sign up for it, or they're going to be paying the boogeyman. So there are all of these threats again that show how incredibly compromised this nation has become. I think people are starting to wake up to it because we're seeing that with all the marches and the uniting together under the one umbrella, or, under one identity as people, regardless of our differences, because the World Economic Forum wants to destabilize our culture, our values, our capacity to have food security, and certainly energy security. And they are the things that are prominent here when you look at the whole overarching agenda to destabilize this nation, to make us feel ashamed of being patriotic, to be ashamed of upholding our value system, to be ashamed of being good stewards of the place that you live. I mean, this is utterly appalling. I'm the granddaughter of a Anzac, and I can tell you now, it might have skipped a generation, but God, did I get it all. And I will fight to protect this nation, and certainly my patch here, which is why I am adamant I will go down to the end with fighting against offshore wind for my sacred place here. And how dare anyone suggest that we shouldn't do anything but protect the place that we value, we love, and we want to keep at a pristine level, want to maintain it for future generations, to say that we want to no longer degrade, that we need to learn from the mistakes of the past. This is all of this ideology that tells us we don't have the right. It takes away our power. Anything that takes away your power doesn't have a place here. And it certainly shouldn't be coming from the mouths of Mr. Albanese, Mr. Bowen, and everyone else that seems to have abandoned this nation.
You mean you don't believe that we have to kill the environment to save the planet?
No, I believe.
You don't believe that?
I believe in strong ecology-based science. You know that one.
Yes, and that's the point. They're saying they need to do all these things in the name of protecting the planet, saving the planet. But that involves killing the environment along the way. Look at the enormous damage of solar and wind. A coal-fired power station and nuclear power station have a footprint of about 40 hectares. Solar and wind have tens of thousands of square kilometres footprint. They're further away from the main cities where we need the electricity. So that means more transmission lines. They're scattered. Coal-fired power station is concentrated in land. It's close to the cities. Minimum transmission area. So what we've got with this solar and wind, scattered, longer, and more to connect. So we've got all of that destruction of the habitat, destruction of natural environment, destruction of the human environment. Communities being torn apart. I had a friend, I still have a very good friend who used to work with me in the Galileo movement. We were both working voluntarily to restore the integrity of science, and the whole government's accountable around the carbon dioxide tax. And one day in 2014, Paul said to me, mate, we are never going to get anywhere until the people start hurting economically. And he said, I'm going to keep working. I'm going to keep working. But you know what's happened, Martine? It's really sad. We have gone from having the lowest electricity prices in the world to the highest electricity prices, amongst the highest in the world, the highest outside of Europe, far higher than our main competitors. So that's destroying our industry. But in addition, we're now seeing the regions standing up and saying, stick your solar, stick your wind, because they're destroying the regions. Stick your transmission lines. To have electricity, coal-fired power station, hydroelectric, nuclear, you need a transmission line. But that's only one concentrated transmission line, not 28,000 kilometres of transmission lines. Think of the land that's going to tear up. I mean, and then the costs of all of this.
Not just land, national parks.
Yes.
This is where the hypocrisy is.
Food
it's
production.
Like they're going through, and farming land, and then people don't understand. I've been saying for a long time, trying to educate them, it's like, go and look and you'll see that when it comes to agricultural land, if you have livestock that are feeding off this land, you will not be able to sell it because it will be seen as contaminated. I have been educating people and telling them about this. I said, and if your land is polluted, you need to check your insurance policies, because just before COVID, they changed policies about anyone who dies from that. Hypocrisy. I'm not even going to get into that. I'm not going to push that button tonight. But I have said to them, go and look at your insurance policies, because the banks, the insurance policies, all of these institutions that have been backing this ideology, part of the World Economic Forum, all new. It's all part of the plan. And so people can go, oh, this is conspiracy. It's not conspiracy. You can go and find those documents. You can go and see those policies. You can go and read this. They've told us exactly what they're going to do. And I think that finally I'm seeing farmers push back. I have been asking some of my family members for more than a decade that you need to say no more often, and that you need to tell this government where to stick it at a state level and on a federal level. And farmers are finally pushing back, but unfortunately I've seen many, the reports were from Billboard Battalion, of who
Wade.
Yeah, Wade, that a third of farmers will be walking away in the next 1 to 2 years from their generational farm because they cannot take any more pressures. And I think that is exactly what these policies are about, is destroying the backbone of this nation, whether it's sheep or it's other forms of agriculture and horticulture.
Well, Martine, it makes sense. It makes no sense on any level at all. You're absolutely correct. I cannot disagree with a single thing you've said in this podcast so far.
I told you we see eye to eye a lot.
we used to have weather dependent power. It was called sailing ships. We're moving back to weather dependent power. And the so-called people pushing this are saying we need to do it because the weather is becoming more extreme. What the hell? You're going to make us more dependent on weather? So that's ridiculous.
My gosh.
Plus, we're killing the environment. Plus, in 2018, I was in North Queensland, I was in Central Queensland, I was in Southern Queensland. I think that was the tail end of the drought. Maybe I got my years wrong. But I remember farmers telling me, North, Central, Southern Queensland, the drought, when people are screaming for fodder crops, they were not going to produce fodder crops because they couldn't afford the money to pump the water to irrigate their crops in a drought. So that's what's going on. So we're killing our food production, we're killing our manufacturing, killing our security. And then we add things like the safeguard mechanism. And by the way, every major climate and energy policy was introduced by the Liberal National Party, every one of them, and then ramped up by the Labor Party. So if you take the safeguard mechanism, Julia Gillard broke a promise to introduce a carbon dioxide tax and emission trading scheme. She got smashed and Labor got tossed out of office. Tony Abbott came back, to his credit, and removed the carbon dioxide tax. Malcolm Turnbull and Greg Hunt, LNP ministers, brought in the safeguard mechanism, which is an emissions trading scheme foundation for a carbon dioxide tax globally. They brought in the foundation. The Liberal National Party contradicted Abbott and brought it back. And now Bowen has come back in 2022, September 2022, I think it was, and Albanese, and they have they've ramped up the safeguard mechanism. The safeguard mechanism means that the top 215 producers of carbon dioxide would have to pay for the privilege of producing nature's trace atmospheric gas essential to all life on this planet. And we produce 1/32 of the carbon dioxide that nature produces, and the total concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is, wait for it, 0.04%. It's not a pollutant. But the safeguard mechanism says they will have to pay money to produce that carbon dioxide. We should be thanking them for it. We should be paying them for it. And then what happens is they don't just take it out of their bottom line. They pass it on to you and I as consumers. So that's who pays for all of this. It's a trap to get money for the United Nations. And the other point that I come back to is many people don't know this. You likely do. Is that global warming was concocted, fabricated by Maurice Strong. He said The enemy is humanity. That tells you what he was thinking. The man was extremely gifted, talented, networking, intelligent, but he was a crook. He was exiled he exiled himself to China because the American police wanted him for crimes in the western United States in Colorado. That's where he stayed until near his death in 2015 when he came back to China, when he came back to Canada. But Maurice Strong fabricated global warming. He then concocted climate change because it morphed into climate change because there was no warming.
There wasn't any warming. That's what the data showed. Yes, correct.
Yep.
Challenge
Then the next point I need to raise in there's so many things about this crook. Maurice Strong was a foundation director of the Chicago Climate Exchange, which was to trade carbon dioxide credits, which is a safeguard mechanism, which is the emissions trading scheme, which is a global carbon dioxide tax. Why? Because he wanted to make billions out of it. He was a director and stayed a director on this Chicago Climate Exchange, which is transacting, exchanging, trading credits, which are complete rubbish. And then he wanted to also get a funding base for the United Nations because Maurice Strong said he had two fundamental aims. Remember, this is the man that said the enemy is humanity. So he was anti-human. Now, what he said was he had two aims for his life. What he had was two aims for life. He said this: de-industrialize Western civilization. Hello, China, which is where he went when he exiled himself, is making money hand over fist and getting very, very wealthy from supplying the West with turbines and solar panels. His second goal was to put in place an unelected socialist global governance. Go and check. Edenhofer, from one of the senior bureaucrats in the UN IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is fraudulent and politically driven entity. It's not scientific. And Christiana Figueres, who was head at the time, she said what I'm about to say. She said she was head of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, which sits above the climate agency, the IPCC. She and he, Edenhofer and Figueres, and many other bureaucrats at the senior levels of the UN have said, this is not about the environment. It's not about climate. It is about putting in place a new world economic order. Full stop, socialism. So that's what these guys are going on about. And every panel you see, every solar panel you see, every wind turbine you see is a signal that the price of electricity will go up, because everywhere you've got solar panels and wind turbines in significant proportion in the electricity mix in the country, the price of electricity has gone up dramatically. And then you think about the contradictions. I've said publicly, and I'll say it again, on the topic of climate science, the CSIRO has been fraudulent. Fraudulent. Fraud is the knowing presentation of something as it is not for personal gain. The CSIRO has made money out of this. And people have kept their tenure. But the other thing is, once they got established the need, dishonestly, fraudulently, to do something about the climate, they then embarked on a fraudulent GenCost report, which is CSIRO's report fabricating that solar and wind are cheaper than coal, oil, and natural gas, which is complete bullshit.
False. It's absolute lies.
We have Dr. Megan Clark, who was chief executive for CSIRO two chief executives ago. At the same time as she was top of the chief executive of the CSIRO, she was on the board of two bank advisory boards: Bank of America Merrill Lynch and Rothschilds Australia. Surely that's a conflict of interest. So,
as they always say, follow the money, and not just the money, it's follow the stench of rotten to the core corruption.
And who pays for this? Every consumer in this country, every taxpayer, every electricity user, every gas user, every single consumer in this country, everyone.
And that's another thing that they've tried to do is, that's definitely one I want to touch on that I haven't put forward as a question, is talking about the monopoly or the corruption of media, mainstream media in Australia, because without that as their control system put in place and continually making sure the narratives are held in place, that there's no independent media apart from certainly platforms like us that challenge the narrative and have thorough discussion and transparency. We don't edit interviews and videos. We try and keep it as real and straight to the point as we can, because there has been no thorough, discord, rigorous discussion, debate about anything in this nation that's been worthwhile in a really long time. We know that because when we came to Canberra to have our inquiry against the whole process of the engagement sessions in lead up to the offshore wind turbines going forward, Senator Hanson-Young cancelled us the day before, as you well know. And that in itself says we can get an inquiry into Senate, but then at the drop of a hat, they have the right to cancel us, even though we crowdfunded, we paid for ourselves to come to Canberra and testify. They knew it was going to blow up in their faces so badly before election that they couldn't afford that. And so they silenced us. So it silenced everyday people that were well informed, had done their due diligence.
The people they represented, they silenced. They're supposed to
Totally.
listen to the people they represent and speak up for them. Instead, they silenced them.
That's communism and tyranny, and this is where we're at.
Correct.
I think the mainstream media, we're talking about transparency and accountability. The mainstream media has not been also held accountable when we have the monopoly like they do here, that we have entire corporations that own media outlets filling people's heads with nothing but lies, deception, and narrative that supports this ideology in the World Economic Forum. Surely there has to be accountability that somehow this spell is broken, because it is like a spell. People are brainwashed by the garbage that they're hearing still. However, in saying that, I have heard recently from a number of 80-year-olds that there's nothing but garbage on the news, especially ABC. Glad to hear that. I'm still one for defund the ABC after their takedown hit on us. They do it to everyone that has somewhat evidence, opinion, data, or anything else that's against their ideology of everything that's natural is disgusting. I'm a natural woman, so what can I say? I'll infuriate them at every breath of my CO2. Let's get on to how we can make mainstream media more accountable, because there is so much lies and deception that's still going on. I mean, the fueling of fear and hatred towards those marks. So thank you to yourself, Pauline and Tyron, who stood united in Canberra and walked with those that held the flag proud, uniting with the people that we do need to take back our values, our culture, and our nation. So thank you. But how do we stop? How do we make this accountable? How do we put in place checks and measures to make sure this kind of monopoly can be undone and stopped, because it has to at some point be undone?
Well, that's a very good question. I think there are some simple answers, simple in concept, but not necessarily simple to do. The mouthpiece media consists of the ABC. We call them the globalist media, the mouthpiece media, the big brother media, the legacy media, the dying media, the dinosaur media, whatever you want to call it. The pleasing thing is that they're on the way out. They are on the way out. If you look at the United States, when it came to the COVID mismanagement and fraud, Joe Rogan had a podcast with Dr. David Martin, not Dr. David Martin, Robert Malone, and it got about a rating of 11.8 million viewers, 11.8 million. At the same time, Tucker Carlson, I think at that time, hadn't been sacked from Fox. He was on Fox, and he was the leading mouthpiece media spokesman, and he had 3.5 million views.
Wow.
So that's 1/3. And then CNN was down to number 9 or 10 with 800,000 views. The mouthpiece media has destroyed itself for two reasons. One is people are waking up to the lies they're peddling. So why would you pay for a lie? You're paying for news, you're paying for information. So people are saying, that's enough, I'm not paying anymore. Secondly, Donald Trump really stuck it into them, and he mastered them. Fake news, but he got them feeding on themselves. So that's the first thing. So the viewing is falling. In Australia, we have got taxpayer-funded ABC. What we need to do with the ABC, they're beyond hope. They're totally beyond hope.
They just need
What
to
we
be
need to do
defunded.
is, well, either sell them, except for that there's one area where they are good, and they're providing a beneficial service, and that's in country, regional areas when it comes to disaster and farming. Disaster news and farming crop reports and market reports. They're very, very good. And even their news outlets in the regions are pretty good because the compares don't go home
Not so
to
much
sleep in
here.
a green area. Well, no,
Well, it's
where
not.
are
It's
you?
not the same here. Yeah, we're in Western Australia, in near
No,
Bunbury,
no,
and
but,
I can say, yeah.
oh,
So
okay.
in the regional areas, I can't say that there's a lot of um, great representation when it comes to the radio, especially the ideology is thick when it comes to TV, somewhat. There's still a lot of bias in the way that it's presented, which is still disappointing because I'm just telling people now, turn it off. Turn
Yep,
off the
so
TV,
that's what I
unplug
was
it,
heading
walk
to.
away.
So, so the ABC, we need to offer it for sale. If no one will buy it, apart from the regional networks, if no one will buy it, shut it down. Just stop it. We're wasting $1.1 billion a year on SBS and ABC. So that's the ABC. Get rid of them. Channel 9, stop buying their product. There is one newspaper, probably one media network that's got some credibility when it comes to climate science, and that's News Corp. You've got Chris Kenny, who used to be very timid about saying anything contrary to the narrative, but now lately he's been speaking much more, not so much against the climate, but against the energy stupidity. We had Adam Crichton in the Australian. We had Graham Lloyd, who was talk on both sides, who will put both sides, not talk on both sides.
Talk about
And
represent.
there's someone else I'm missing too. The guy who's turning into a real gem, Chris Uhlmann. He's turning into a
Yeah,
real
Chris
gem. He
is
was
great.
in the ABC. He came to Channel 9. His weekend opinion pieces in the Weekend Australian on Saturday in the front section are just gold every day. Whether he's talking about transgender, energy, climate, governance, he's just amazing. So News Corp, I will give them a plug.
Yeah.
But the key to it is stop buying their product. They're only a
Turn it
monopoly
off.
because someone's buying the product. And the other thing to recognise, there are three types of media now, Martine. There's the independent, people's media, truth-seeking, freedom-pushing media. Take a bow. That's you. That's Joe Rogan. That's Tucker Carlson now that he's been sacked. And by the way, this is really interesting. When he was with News Corp in Fox Network in America, he had very high ratings. And when he got sacked for contradicting the COVID narrative, because Big Pharma advertises on the networks in America and controls the advertising, when he got sacked, people said, well, that's the end of Tucker. No, it was almost the end of Fox because Tucker
Totally.
soared. Now he's got his own media group. So the second media is the anti-social media, which is known as Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Who else am I missing? X has brought a breath of fresh air there because he's brought in the truth, and that's forced, and that's taken most people to rapidly move to X, which has forced Facebook to start telling the truth and stop fact checking. Censoring. So we've seen some hope in social media because of X and because of Rumble and because of Telegram. But YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook are still heavily biased. And they have admitted during COVID that they were telling lies when they said that they weren't influenced by government. Now Zuckerberg is telling us that Biden told him, and he did censor people. We know that they censored people in this country based upon what the Department of Health was saying and Home Affairs. The third media outlet is the mainstream mouthpiece globalist Big Brother, the lying harlot media, whatever you want to call them, and they're on their way out and they're destroying themselves. So all I can say is exactly what you said. Don't buy it. Stop it.
Turn it off. Unplug. I think that the word my dear friend Robin uses is prostitute. So I think she's nailed it. I can't think of a better word than that. Every time she says it, I'm like,
Well,
it's just the quintessential.
Dave Pello calls them the lying harlot media. They're for sale, they're prostituting themselves, and they're telling lies.
Totally they are. For sale to the highest bidder, and no moral compass. That pretty much describes them. So getting back to we got into this one, how do we come back from this? How can we stop once this is unplugged? Once we start this, we need to start looking at how did we allow the media to be completely taken over by large corporations. The media of the world is owned by pretty much 5 corporations. I mean, it's the same as in Australia. So the thing is that that needs to not only be dissolved at some point by stepping away and no longer supporting it, but we also need to make sure that never happens again. That's the things that these accounts and measures and making sure there are policies put in place, that there needs to be balanced representation in media outlets. And so this is where accountability and transparency went out the window. I mean, COVID was, and we're going down the same way as the UK at the moment, where they're trying to censor people. They tried to do it during COVID. Oh, you were putting posts on that was about, I'm like, posts? It's like, well, that's my opinion. That's my channel. You can not listen to it or move along. I think it's come to the point where the ideology is no longer sitting right, and certainly people are waking up day by day. I want to just quickly get on to one thing, which is about patriotism and taking back our nation. Certainly turning off from that is one thing, but more than anything, we've got to see that there are more representatives across the board in local, state and federal politics, but also that this accountability, how do we get to that point where we're going to hold them accountable? Because inquiries seem to be just falling on deaf ears. And I know 50 years ago, the Labor government was stood down by the Governor General, I believe, that we're getting to a point where there's a no confidence vote against this government that's building. And all I can say is that we need to stand strong and united, because the only way we're taking back our nation and what we love and hold dear to us is by being united, not letting them divide us, which is part of their plan. What is your advice for everyday Australians about keeping and retaining our culture, our values, and what we hold sacred in this nation? What would you like to wrap up today's interview with, advice on how to do that and stay strong?
Well, you've raised several things there, and I'll go back to ICLEI. Sorry, your local government, your call for people to become aware about local government. But I'll talk first of all about
I
governance
know,
in
you're big
general.
sigh there. It's like, where do we start? This could be a
so much.
series.
There is so much. Just like, well, Australia is set up as a constitutional monarchy. It's not a monarchy. It's a constitutional monarchy. In a monarchy, the king or queen rules. They govern. They dictate. They order. Whether it's benevolent dictatorship or totalitarian dictatorship, they are in charge. Full stop, end of story. In a constitutional monarchy, we are effectively a republic. We are a republic. A republic is a form of governance that is where the senior sovereignty agency is the rule of law, the constitution. A republic is a country that is ruled by the rule of law. That is Australia. Sorry, should be Australia. Now, what we've got is a wonderful constitution, which is developed from the British system and the American system. We borrowed from both and from all over the world.
The Magna Carta.
Our guys, our founding fathers did an amazing job. It's not perfect because no document can be perfectly covering every situation, but it is a wonderful document. It gives us a very good source. Now, we are a constitutional monarchy. The king or queen, and I like the way it's set up, is not elected. They're not some tired old hack from a political past. They're independent, and they have largely served the people. That's their role. They have reserve powers. They don't have authoritarian powers. They have reserve powers, and they serve the people by serving the Constitution, and they've done a bloody good job of that. But essentially, we run ourselves. So what a democracy, and it's a constitutional democracy, what a democracy relies upon is active participants. The people need to be active. What's happened in this country is that people have become passive. Whatever you want to do, go ahead and do it, government, and just bitch and moan about them, but don't stand up to them. Don't hold them accountable. Even at election time, just go in and draw a picture of dicks and balls on the ballot paper, and then on Friday, then on a Monday saying, "What the hell, Labor's back," or "What the hell, Liberals are back," And what we need to do is to have people say, "I'm going to do my research because my vote determines whether or not a certain person gets elected, which determines whether or not a certain tax policy stays or goes or a better system comes." That's the first thing. So we need to do our research. We need to, I believe, make a decision on candidates, not on parties. We need to make the decisions based upon candidates who've got the right values for Australia, who've got a strength of character, who will stand up and speak, even if it's against what the government is saying, and who have good policies. That's it. So but that's not the end of the governance role that a citizen should have. A citizen should have the guts to go up and call his or her member of parliament and hold them accountable every day if necessary. Telephone them, write to them, not emails, they're too easy, they just get ignored. Just write to them in paper letters, visit their bloody office and demand to get a meeting with them, and hold them accountable. When they do something wrong, hold them accountable. When they do something right, congratulate them. But they work for you. That's what needs to happen. At the moment, we've got the people working for the government instead of the government serving the people. The other thing we need is, and this has been One Nation policy for decades now, is we need citizens-initiated referendum. That's where if someone is upset with a law or someone who's not fulfilling his duties as a member of parliament, then they can get up a petition to that effect. Once a petition gets a small number of signatures, it's sizable, but it's only about 2 to 5% depending upon the country. Then that petition is served. There's a referendum called, and they say that policy, that law that we don't like, that is then voted on. Should we keep it or trash it? And the people then can trash it and get rid of it. Now, there's been a very good friend of mine. She'd be dead now. She's many years older than I am. She, when I was in my 20s, she went to Switzerland, and she came back, and she was never interested in politics. But I said to her, "Auntie Betty, what did you think of Switzerland?" And I was expecting friendly people, orderly people, rule of law, clean, beautiful scenery, wonderful standard of living. You know what she said? She said, "The politicians are responsible." And I went, "What?" And it's a stunning response. It stood out because what they had was citizens-initiated referendum in Switzerland, and the politicians knew that if they buggered up, they got turfed out. And if they made a faulty rule or law, they'd got turfed out by the people. So that we need a citizens-initiated referendum. But the number one thing we need is people actively engaged in politics, because a passive democracy where the people are asleep falls into control of the media, the big money corporations, the billionaires who control Labor and Liberal, and that destroys the country. But when you've got active people, then the politicians are accountable to the people. So we need active participation, just like you need to stop reading the lying harlot media. You need to get actively involved in holding politicians accountable and voting sensibly.
Wow. I think the citizens initiated referendums is part of a direct democracy platform that I've talked about. That's exactly what we need. This is where it comes back to local regional governance and what's correct for these areas, and how across the board we distribute the power back to the people again. I think you've just nailed it. That's exactly what I've been saying for a long time.
Thank you. If I could just make 2 points. You started with a comment about local government. You are absolutely correct. But the depth of the problem is enormous, and it's frightening. What we've got in our constitution is a federal constitution. We have got a federation of sovereign independent states. New South Wales is independent from Queensland. Full stop, end of story. Our federal constitution, and each state has a constitution, our federal constitution basically outlines the majority of government services, and there have to be some government services, are done by the states, not the Commonwealth. And so what that meant was it set up competitive federalism, which meant that if Queensland did a good job on an area, banning a law or enacting a law or becoming more efficient, people moved and businesses moved from other states to Queensland. And that's happened. If South Australia did something stupid, they leave South Australia, businesses and individuals, and that has happened. So what it's called is competitive federalism. If you've got a better way of governing, then people move to your state. Now, what is that? That's a marketplace in governance. So you've got competitive federalism, so you can go to the best governed state. What has happened, though, sadly, is that the federal government has taken more and more of the services and centralised them, so there's no bloody competition.
No.
And then it gets even worse. Under our constitution and under state constitutions and state laws, the states have the power. The states have the power. But they're bought off by the federal government, which has the money. The High Court, the federal government in 1943 stole the power to levy income tax from the states.
Yeah.
If the states had had it, it would have been far better, more efficiently done and far better spent. There would have been accountability. But instead, the federal government stole it. The High Court backed them up. And the High Court has been responsible over the years for many really damaging verdicts in our country. So the federal government has the money. So the federal government then says to the states, you do this or else. And the federal government takes money through the GST from the states. Your state of WA is paying the lion's share of GST, and it's getting less than it pays into it. Tassie, South Australia, are basket cases because of their own bloody government policies, and they're stealing money from you guys. Queensland, which has, this stunned me, I don't know what the case is now for the last 2 years, but this stunned me, Martine, a few years ago. Queensland is a dynamo. Agriculture, it's potentially way more dynamic than it is because it's held back by government. But Queensland's got coal, which is sometimes number one export ahead of iron ore. It's got coal, it's got agricultural products, it's got cattle, it's got tourism, it's got education. We should be paying more into GST than we're taking out. But we are the reverse. We were paying more, we were getting more from GST than we're putting into it. I mean, how the hell can you justify a system like that? So what I'm saying is that we need to get back to the power to levy taxes, the power to be in charge of the services in the state government's hands, and the state governments give money to the federal government on the form of a levy. At the moment, now we come to so we've got the federal government has the money, which is the power. The state governments have the legislative power, which now is being dwindled because the federal government is taking the power. Yeah. And we've got the local councils with the problems. So federal government has the money, the state governments have the legislative power, and the local governments have the problems. And what's happening in our country is that a lot of government funding, a lot of local government funding is coming from the federal government, which means, and it comes with guidelines attached and directions attached and restrictions attached, which means who's running your local council? The bloody federal government, which is crazy. And then we've got ICLEI, International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives. You're probably familiar with that. Yeah. It's implementing UN policies and World Economic Forum policies at local government levels. You know, so we've been holding some accountable, but the corruption in local government level in Queensland, just in some councils, is astronomical, and they can't be held accountable because
we have our local council elections coming up in October, so this is a hot topic for us. So we are making sure that we get the correct information out there about the new candidates that are putting their hat in the ring, which is great. But we're talking about here blackmail and coercion, which has been, that's what this is. This is what we're talking about, blackmail and coercion of the federal government. We saw it rolling out completely during COVID days, and it's continuing because of the way that this top-down power grab that's happened from the federal government. I think that your words of encouragement of telling everyday Australians that they need to get back their nation by being engaged, to take action, to take accountability for their acquiescing their power for a long time. I think that that's something that is starting to be heard. I still feel that we've got a way to go, but I think that at this point, these marches are a show of unity, that we are starting to awaken as a nation and get our patriotism back, and certainly getting back our sense of power from a personal perspective. That's something that I've never really had an issue with, I've got to be honest, but that's just me. I think that if we can encourage others to take sensible and proactive steps on how to do that, just as you've said, through education, through sharing these stories and people knowing how we got here, this is how we get out.
Yep, I didn't address one of your points, and that was culture. Culture is cohesion. It's the glue that binds people. It's the values. It's the standards. It's the myths. It's the legends that hold people together. And part of our individual identity, there are two basic structures, Martine. You'd know this from for organising human society. One is the family, and the other is the nation state.
Right.
Not a global governance, but a nation state. And
both have
the
been attacked.
the UN is attacking both because they want to centralise power in a global, unelected, socialist global governance. Culture is directly under attack, indirectly under attack. Culture, I set up a large mine in central Queensland. We spent a lot of time doing the planning for the mine, doing the equipment selection for the mine, but where we spent most of the time, we were ahead of our time in 1990, was in designing the culture. Enormous amount of time in recruitment, because most people know, except for the very ignorant, know that the most important determinant of productivity, safety, quality, risk, profitability is culture. You can have shitty equipment, you can have broken down, dilapidated facilities, but if you've got a great culture, it'll all get fixed. Yeah, so culture is extremely important. What they're trying to do is smash national culture. Now, national culture, national identity is part of our individual identity. You and I take great pride and we see ourselves as Australians. That doesn't, you're not just an Australian, you're Martine. I get that. But a big part of you is pride in your country. And that's very, very important, and that's what they're smashing. The second thing that I wanted to touch on is I had a conversation with Bob Carter, the late Professor Bob Carter, who died in 2016. We were running around the country separately, working on exposing the carbon dioxide tax. Anyway, one day we were just having a break at some rally or conference, I can't remember what it was. And Bob said to me, very, very good man, he said to me, you know, Malcolm, this carbon dioxide, this climate change is the biggest scam ever. And I said, Bob, it's not even close. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, the money scam is far, far bigger. He said, yeah, okay, the printing of money out of thin air and the control in a few people's hands. And he said, yeah, that is the biggest. And I said, no, it's not the biggest, Bob. The money scam is the second biggest. The biggest scam is the anti-human scam. If you dig beneath the message, every issue you've raised today, the globalists are pushing, if you dig beneath it, it's saying that humans are greedy, rapacious, uncaring, irresponsible, unkind, they don't care. So let us take over the running for you. That's what they're saying. So it's all about control, but what people don't realise is that that's happening. But what they also don't realise is the people who are wanting to take the control are bloody humans. So if we're greedy, irresponsible, uncaring, unkind, etc., we're handing control over to those monkeys. So what we've got to do is realise that, I mean, you and I and every human are unlike horses and dogs and so on. A horse can give birth to a foal. The foal plops on the ground and after 20 minutes struggles to its feet. The next thing is in 20 minutes, half an hour, is trotting. Then it sidles up to its mum and starts suckling. And in 3 months, it's on the grass and it's just like any other horse. That's it. Gone.
Yeah.
It's completely, it's not, it depends upon the herd for protection, but you and I and every human were vulnerable and needed complete care, every aspect of our lives, for years. And so what that shows is that the people who gave us the best care, our ancestors, because we're here, were the ones who had the best care genes, if you like. So another trait that's unique to humans is our ability to love. And I'm not just talking about a mother horse loving its foal. That's nurture. I'm talking about spiritual love. So humans have that. The other thing that humans have is reason. And we can think things through logically when we bloody well choose to. If we don't, we can make stupid decisions. But humans are unique in having love, care, and reason. And all of that gets set aside by dopey politicians at times who are running by the ego. And we're all vulnerable to this in terms of you and I have both got egos. We're vulnerable to that. We also have a sense of belonging. You have shown that your sense of belonging does not trump your need to speak up. But for many people, they're afraid to speak up because they get ostracized from the group. And that is the end of them as a member of the group. So what I'm saying is that we've got this love, care, and reason, unique in the animal kingdom, unique to our human species, but it's trumped by and suppressed by ego and the need to belong. What we've got to do is get back to love, care, and reason, and that'll set humanity right. But that battle starts with each of us individually.
Warm fuzzies there. I just don't know. It's just, don't know what really to say to that. It's just like, as a mother whose daughter is about to get married, and that's one of the most important things to me, and engendering that stewardship into others and helping them have the confidence to speak out and support and protect the places that they love. That's something that I do, or try to do. I know I do. I'm not even trying. I do that every day and provide a platform for others to have a safe environment to speak their truth to. And that is how we grow, learn, and live together. And it is through love, because it's camaraderie. It's understanding we have more in common than we have differences. And the more that we focus on the things that we have in common, the more that we're all going to win. Because when it comes to the foundations and the fabric of our society and what that looks like, how the framework looks, and how we want it to be remaining for future generations, it's up to us. Simple.
Beautifully said.
Oh, look, thank you so much. I think probably we could have a Friday afternoon sundowner every week and have these chats.
I have to have you as a guest on my live stream.
Oh, let's do that. I think that we've had numerous conversations that are opening up great dialogue. I know that we are looking at having a wonderful event coming up, and that's something we want you to be part of here over in Western Australia. So we'll keep having a chat about that, and hopefully we'll have news for people. Thank you for joining me today.
Well, thank you so much for the invitation. But more important, thank you so much for what you're doing as being a part of the people's independent, truth-seeking, freedom-pushing media. And thank you for being the most important person on earth. You're a mother. Thank you, sincerely. It's so very, very important. No, I mean that sincerely.
It's my top job. It's like, I'm a very independent woman, always have been. But when it comes to my daughter, I am like a mother bear, that there's nothing that could come between me and my beautiful girl. And I make no apologies for whatsoever, because as far as I'm concerned, I had that beautiful child to be responsible for her for a long time. I did everything I could to make sure she didn't go into childcare, and made sure she was loved every single day of her life. She had nurture and strength and stability her whole life. So she's turned out to be a great human being. I'm very, very proud of her. And I think that if we engendered that to more people and said that, we could be more loving to our children, that we're going to have that reward in years to come. That's all we can say, hey? It's the best we do.
Yep. Good on you, Mum.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Senator Roberts. Have a lovely day, and thank you for joining me today on Martini's Eco and Country Bite, Edge Radio Australia.